Month 5 of real estate, nothing happens. Month 6 of real estate, still 0 sales. Month 7 of real estate, 0 sales. Month 8, things start to turn a little bit. I get 2 under contract in 1 weekend. 2 weeks later, I get 3 under contract in 1 weekend. And in my second year of real estate, even with a heart attack, even having to get into couples therapy after calling off our wedding, I did $17 million in volume. I share that with you because it's a number. And while my business was going great, I was a personal failure. Welcome back to the Be the Standard podcast. Listen, this podcast has been a lot of things over the last few years. It started talking about real estate and selling, buying, and investing in homes. It transitioned as I became a full-time business and performance coach, sharing my marriage, sharing things about my business, sharing things about my life. But what's come full circle in this whole thing, and I never thought that I would be here, is me getting back into a place where I'm going into the community to serve the men and women that I just came from, as real estate agents and as mortgage lenders. Here's the reality. I was forced to become good at real estate because I burned the boats in my life, by choice. Real estate didn't happen on purpose. When you look back on my story and how I built a 7-figure business in just shy of 5 years, it all started with what happened to me as a kid. I think it's important to have this origin story so that we have a place to start. Because if I simply just started to give you context and content on marketing, seduction, and leadership, well, you wouldn't know if it was going to work or not. And so this is a place where you get to hear and see my story and how I got here. I remember when we moved down to Texas. We moved down there in 5th grade, and we went to school down there in 5th grade, 6th grade, and 7th grade. And as I was wrapping up 7th grade year, the intent was for us to plant some roots. My parents had every intent to buy a home, and we had just put in the notice on the rental that we were living at. And the real estate agent that we were working with, who was a friend of my dad's, he gave him some advice. At the time, it was stated income, and so when you went to go fill out your application for your loan, it simply asked, how much money do you make? The real estate agent knew how much we had to make to qualify for this new build that we were going to move into, and under his advice, my parents filled it out accordingly. Well, what transpired over the next few weeks was that they did employee verification. Inevitably, my dad ended up getting fired from his job, and we lost the home because we could no longer qualify for the loan. Since we had put in the notification on the rental home, what we found ourselves was in a dilemma. My mom was running my grandfather's business, and she knew that we weren't happy in Texas. So my parents made a choice. They left Texas, and they moved here to Colorado, where we reside today. Now, that event that happened put my parents behind the schedule. They didn't have the money to pay for college, and I watched throughout the end of middle school and all throughout high school as my dad worked multiple jobs just to help put food on the table, all while my mom was the breadwinner of the family. My dad worked at Einstein Bagels to make bagels in the morning, and then he would go work at Kohl's in the evening to stock boxes and unpack the truck. And in between there, he would stock vending machines, put chips, sodas, candy in it, all because he couldn't get a job. And I watched this happen, and by the time it was time, my senior year, for me to go to college, I felt a calling. Now, that calling coincided with our inability to pay for college, and my parents told me recently that they would have paid for college, but it's hard for me to believe them at this point. I know they would have figured it out, but in that time, their stress was high, finances were bad, and I couldn't even qualify for my own cell phone. So I was kind of put into a place where I didn't have a whole lot of options. And it was in that moment that I had to sell myself and pursue going to the Air Force Academy. Now, I was the last person accepted to the Air Force Academy prep school. I wasn't smart enough to get into the Air Force Academy. And I had to take the SAT and the ACT a combined 9 times just to try to get the right score to get in, which I failed at. I only got a 1050 out of 1600 every single time. But what's funny about this whole thing is it forced me to sell myself. This was really the second time that I had started to develop any type of sales skills. And it was this ability for me to sell myself. And I was selling myself because I would call down to the Air Force Academy prep school every day started in March once I got denied to the Air Force Academy Prep School and to the Air Force Academy. And I would call down to the admissions office and I would just ask them a question. I was like, listen, I don't know if anybody's dropped out, but if anybody does, I'm still interested and I would really love to come to school. And every day she would say no. And every time I would call, we would build a relationship. And over the course of those 2.5 months leading up to high school graduation, me and the lady at the admissions office started to get to know each other. And there was 2 weeks left in the end of high school. And I'll never forget, I was driving in my Jeep Wrangler, driving down this hill to go to my friend's house to watch the hockey playoffs. And I get a phone call. I get a phone call from the admissions office. And I had my Nokia cell phone and I pulled it out and I answered it. And I go, hello? She goes, Sergio, it's so-and-so from the Air Force Academy admissions office. We just had somebody drop out and we wanted to offer you the slot because you've been so persistent. And everybody right there on the moment, I took it. Unfortunately, that meant that my summer was going to get cut short. I was only going to have 3 weeks at home right after graduation to go to school. But it was in that moment that I realized that the moment that I believed in myself and I could sell myself, that I could put myself in a position to get whatever it is that I wanted. Now, over the course of the next 10 years, I would graduate from the Air Force Academy. I would become a captain in the military, and I would conclude my time in service in Afghanistan with a 7.5-month deployment. That deployment changed me forever. And when I got back in 2013, in February of 2013, I made the decision to leave the Air Force because they wanted to send me to Iceland right after I got back, and I was just done. I wanted to pursue something else. I wanted to pursue doing something that made me happy, and so I chose to leave the military and go out and help open up a CrossFit gym. And for the next 3 years, I racked up credit card debt up to about $18,000, and I was making about $24,000 a year, working anywhere between 50 to 60 hours a week, and I loved it. Unfortunately, $24,000 a year, you can't really do a whole lot. And so I made the decision to use my GI Bill from the military to go back and get my master's in business administration. One of the reasons was, well, I had no fucking clue who I was or what I wanted to do. But the main driving factor is I needed the money. You see, the only way for me to afford rent and to afford food without having to beg my parents, which they reluctantly helped me and I was afraid to ask, was I had to figure out how to make additional income. And so at the time, if you're in school, the GI Bill will cut you a housing allowance check every month. And my rent was only $500, and they were cutting me a check for $2,200, and I used the rest to make a little bit of a life for myself. But as I was coming up on the summer semester, there was a break. There was a month break between my last class in July and my first class in September. And because there was a gap and I wasn't in school, well, the military wasn't going to give me a paycheck, which meant there's no way that I can make rent. There's no way I was going to be able to buy food and pay for groceries. And so I had to find a class. My roommate at the time encouraged me. He's like, you should get your real estate license. He's like, there's good money in this. He's like, you'd be good at it, especially with your background in the military and your ability just to be you. And I listened to him. And I went in and I got my real estate license after going to an in-class, in-person school for 3.5 weeks. I did it. And in doing that, I was able to get my housing allowance and pay for my groceries and my rent and all that. And at the same time, I got my real estate license. It wasn't shortly after that I found out that I was really struggling with PTSD to the point where depression was really bad. I was turning to drugs and alcohol. I was really, really lost. Couple that with a breakup from a girl, and it just broke me. And I found myself in this dark, deep spiral on the cusp of not knowing if I wanted to be here on this earth anymore. My parents were worried about me. I was disconnected from everything around me. I was just sedating with alcohol, using drugs just to try to feel something. And there was this catalyst in this breakup that led me to a point where I started to seek help through therapy. I had left serving my country and now I had to figure out how to take care of myself. And it was over those next few years of being in therapy for 2 years that I was able to really find out who I was. I mean, I did a lot of deep, deep hard work. I was able to uncover some things from my past as a kid. I was able to work through some of the hard shit that I had to go through when I was in Afghanistan. But over the next 2.5 to 3.5 years, going into therapy and also just trying to find myself, the work that I did internally created a strong, powerful version of me. And I share that with you because at the same time, I had left my $24,000 a year job as a CrossFit coach, and I had gone into corporate America making $65,000 a year. I got that job as an account manager at the tail end of doing all of this hard work on myself. I mean, I had to uncover some demons, man. I mean, I had to build confidence for myself. And while it was shaky at best, I could start to feel and really have this certainty in me. That led me to quitting my job at this one pivotal moment. I remember working this corporate job and I was just getting tired of it. It was about 2 years in, and I was playing around with the idea of, well, becoming a real estate agent. I saw what some of my friends were doing. I knew that I could be good at it if I had just invested some time. I was doing it on the side a little bit, and I bought my own home, helped my parents buy a home, helped my ex-girlfriend's parents buy a home. I was starting to have a little bit of success. And I thought to myself, I was like, what would happen if I burned the fucking boats, went all in on this? What that was going to require me to do, though, was leave the security and the safety of my $65,000 a year job for the hopes that me going into real estate could produce more, make more, give me some freedom and the life that I wanted. It was right around that time that I met my girlfriend. And we got together and we started to date, and we were going to yoga class all the time. And I remember just struggling with this thought. Do I want to leave this job? I met her at the job, which was awesome, so got a lot out of that. Or do I want to stay in this job and just continue to not like what I do? And there was this one evening when I was in yoga class, and I've been wrestling with this question over and over and over again. And I'll remember it was the end of yoga class, and I was laying on my back in a pool of sweat. And I simply was just asking the question, like, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? And as I'd laid back into it and the music started to drop and I could feel my body just start to relax, I heard my grandfather's voice clear as day say, just do it. Now, whether that was God using my grandfather to speak to me or whether that was God himself, I don't know. But I heard my grandfather, and the next day I went into my job and I put in my notice. I quit. And when I quit, my boss at the time, who was a huge prick, told me that I was going to fail, that the market was oversaturated. And because it was oversaturated, all I was going to do was wash out. But before I washed out, all I was going to do was bake cookies for open houses. I was pissed, man. I had this negative voice just start to creep in. And my last day at that office, I went down to the Department of Regulatory Affairs where I had to hand over my real estate license so that they can make a copy of it. And on the other end of the desk, there was this lady. And this lady at the other side of the desk, she looked at me. She kind of gave me a once over, and then she walked back. She came back to the front of the thing after making a scan of the document. She looks me in the eye and she goes, I just want you to know, nobody's going to trust you to buy or sell a home with all those tattoos. And then she just went quiet. In the last 48 hours, I had 2 people start to doubt me, which has put doubt in my own mind about this thing that I was going to step into. And over the next 7 months, I made 0 sales, 0 money. Nothing came in. Nothing. It got to the point where I was so desperate and so lost that I started to update my LinkedIn resume or in LinkedIn profile and update my resume. I was starting to search for a job. And I share this with all of you because many of you who get into real estate have felt the same thing. There's this pivotal moment where you have to make a decision. Do you truly go all in, or do you have a plan B? Because the moment you get a plan B, your power and your focus and your attention gets split. And now you're trying to play this game of, if this works out, great, but if it doesn't, I got this. And I'll never forget, I went to my 10-year Air Force Academy reunion. And one of my buddies, Jacoby Kendrick, he rolls up on me. He goes, hey, man, I heard you're in real estate. I was like, yeah. He goes, how you doing? I was like, it's not going well. He goes, well, I'm going to this event in a couple weeks. You should come. I was like, what is it? He goes, well, I got a real estate coach. His name's Kevin Ward. He's taught me everything I need to know. I built my business based on what he's told me. You should come check it out. It's like, bro, I got nothing to lose. Sure. With no money, I made the commitment to go out to California, and I went to this event. And I'll never forget, Kevin was on stage and he was speaking. Everything he was saying was just making sense to me. This was month 4 of my real estate career. Now, don't forget, I didn't make $1 for 7 months. But month 4 of my real estate career, I go to this event. I'm just like, whoa, this is it. This is the way I want to run my business. And at the end of that event, he makes a pitch. He makes a pitch for this 100-day program that it's called the 100-day challenge. He's like, if you do this, your business is going to change forever. And so I talked to Jacoby. I was like, would you do this? He's like, I did. Changed everything about my business. And I was just looking around. I was like, all right. Like, sounds great. I think I'm going to do this. And then he goes, it's $5,000. Now, you got to remind yourself, I'm still about $18,000 in credit card debt. Got a lot of debt to my name. And even though I was making $65,000 a year, which I thought was a lot, I wasn't doing too well for myself. I got a girlfriend at home. I'm trying to make this career change. There's a lot going on because her and I are fighting because we just are struggling in our relationship. And so I'm sitting there being like, I got to make some moves. With not a whole lot of money to my name, I decide to walk back and I sign up for this 100-day challenge. Month 5 of real estate, nothing happens. Month 6 of real estate, still 0 sales. Month 7 of real estate, 0 sales. Month 8, things start to turn a little bit. I get 2 under contract in 1 weekend. 2 weeks later, I get 3 under contract in 1 weekend. What happened over the next 12 months from that one decision at that event was I made $331,000 in commissions. I won Rookie of the Year at my brokerage that I joined. I was crushing it. And as I headed into year 2, 2 things started to happen. One, I proposed to my girlfriend, now fiance. And even though we were engaged, there was a lot of turmoil in our relationship. And all that turmoil and all the stress from my business of me trying to produce and reproduce what I did my first year, all that stress led to me having a heart attack. Now that heart attack was scary. It created a lot of doubt, a lot of darkness, a lot of insecurity. It was one of the hardest moments because I lost this identity and this piece of me, this confidence. And you know, if you're in real estate, like this game is hard. And when you have the world against you, and now you have you against you, well, it becomes almost impossible. But there was this piece in me that I knew that if I could just continue to make plays, continue to show up, even if it wasn't 100%, that one day it would pay off. And it did. For months, I didn't do too well, but there was right around month 4 after the heart attack that things started to turn again. And in my second year of real estate, even with a heart attack, even having to get in a couples therapy after calling off our wedding, I did $17 million in volume. I share that with you because it's a number. And while my business was going great, I was a personal failure. My relationship at home was just falling apart. Year 3, I made $675,000 in commissions. And again, me and Lizzie, my fiance, we were in a terrible place. We were in couples therapy, trying to work through some things. I was in individual therapy, trying to work through my own shit. I also had a coach. And while things were starting to slowly get better, there was a lot of just like valleys of despair, moments where I wanted to quit, both in the relationship and in the business. Then COVID happened. And COVID was an interesting year. It was one of the first moments that I felt like this is the time for me to rise up, that all the work I had done on myself, all the work that I had done leading to this place was going to pay off. This was also around the same time when people at my brokerage weren't cheering for me anymore. You see, in the beginning, everybody's like, oh, you got this. You're an underdog, right? This was like the underdog mentality. It's like, you're going to crush it. And then you start to crush it, and all of a sudden the claps stop. And all of a sudden the people stop complimenting. And all of a sudden you've done something that they couldn't do, and now they don't support you anymore. It's a tough spot to be, but I get it. What they didn't understand is that all the work I had done on myself prior to finding the brokerage was what allowed me to thrive. But what was crushing me from the inside was my marriage, my relationship. When 2020 hit, me and my fiance at the time, we were in a much better spot, but we still weren't doing well. I dumped everything I possibly had into real estate that year. And while I had the biggest year of my entire life, right around $775,000 in commissions, when December rolled around, I was so burnt out, so disconnected, so far from who I wanted to be that wasn't worth it to me anymore. It wasn't worth it. And I rolled into 2021 being like, I don't know if I want to do this again. I'm not going to do this again if this is what it's going to be like. 2021 was a little bit different. 2021 is when I started to really connect with myself, and I hired a different coach, Coach Tim Adams. I had Tim Adams, I had Kevin Ward in my corner, and these two men allowed me to really start to rise as a man, rise as a real estate agent, rise as a husband. I get married in July of 2021, and in August of 2021, I find out that we're getting ready to have a kid. Life's moving pretty quick at this point. I had built this business up to this point without a kid, right? And so it's easy as a single guy with no other responsibilities to build this business. I was also kind of being a shithead, not being a great husband. As 2022 rolled around and our son Luca came into the picture, well, what came from that was simply this: a deep-rooted desire to produce at the highest level. Because my wife was gonna be a stay-at-home mom, which meant all of it fell on me. And 2022 was the first year that I had my first seven-figure year. When you take into the commissions and all the other money that was coming in, over seven figures. So I found myself in a place where I had built a seven-figure business. I had worked 8 months out of the year. I was more connected and in love with my wife than I had ever been. I had a brand new son and I was a father. And I found myself in this place where I was like, holy shit, I pulled this off. I can't believe it. I did it in a way that I was proud of. I was no longer a personal failure and a professional success. I was a personal success and a professional success. And I did it not just by like knocking on doors and cold calling and expireds. I did it by just like organically. Social media, calling my friends, just connecting with people, providing the highest level of service. I ran no ads. I had zero market spend. I was just doing the work. And as 2023 rolled around, my wife has a miscarriage. The market starts to go to shit. And I still produce 18 million in that year. Right around $450,000 in GCI, and me and my wife are doing fantastic. But there was this thing inside of me that started to just turn off. It was no longer about me wanting to be in real estate anymore. I had started to see glimpses of myself becoming the guy that had taken advantage of my parents and saw what happened to my parents. And I started to make the connection that I was starting to see people as commission checks, which is not who I am. And there was this disconnect from it. It was like no matter how much money I made, no matter what I did, there was just this disconnect from me. And you can call it divine intervention. You can call it whatever you want. But I went to this event and I came out of this 4-day event after meeting my current coach, Garrett J. White. And I was like, you know what? I'm called to do one thing, and that's to lead men and women. You see, I know what it takes to build a business. And I've fucked it up so many places, so many different ways. I've done the wrong things. I've done the right things. I've broken relationships. I've had to repair relationships. I figured out how to operate at the highest level while staying in shape, while staying connected to myself, while building a deep connected relationship, while being an amazing father, spending time with my friends, going out and having fun, doing all of these things about life, all while building this business to support the life that I wanted. And that's why I'm doing this now. It's not because the real estate market changed. I guarantee you I could step back into this game and be the number one producer at my brokerage. Well, top 3. There's 2 in there that are just incredible. Could never catch them. They're just fucking incredible. But I'd still be the top 1% of 1% in the country. That's the level of certainty and confidence I have in the way that I built this business. You see, I didn't follow selling. I didn't follow the marketing that everybody else does. I relied on 3 simple things. 3 simple things. The art of seduction, seducing people to want to work with you, to beg to work with you. That they see you as the only option. They're like, hey, you're the guy or you're the girl. I have to have you on my team as I start to either buy, sell, or invest in real estate. And this art of seduction pulls people to you like a magnet and you attract them. The second piece is this marketing. From the way I dress, to the way I walk, to the way I talk, to how I act, to the way I show up. I market 24/7. And I throw that shit up on the internet. And because it's on the internet and that everybody can see it, my consistency attracts the right people into my life. There's no doubt in my mind that I would never make 2,000 phone calls in a day. But I can make one piece of content, get 500,000 views, get new people to follow me, nurture those relationships, take those relationships, turn them into clients, serve them at the highest level, create client lifetime value from it, and also referrals from those clients that I found on the internet simply because I was willing to turn on the camera and speak. And the last piece, leadership. You have to understand that if you're in this game as a real estate agent or a lender, you're a coach. You're a leader. You lead people to a decision. You coach people through this process. The moment that I was able to master these three identities, the moment that everything changed for me. And this is why I'm stepping back in to serve this community, this group. I believe that there's no reason any single agent or any single mortgage lender shouldn't be making any less than $250,000 a year. Easy. Take home. After taxes, after splits, all of it. And it's not like you're going to be working 24/7 in this hustle culture. I'm in the anti-hustle hustle club. What I'm about is you getting efficient and effective with the work that you do, getting clear on where you're at and what you want to pull off, and then we create the monthly missions and the monthly targets along the way to help make this as simple as possible. And so that's what I'm doing. My story is just one of many. The hundreds of agents that I've coached here locally in Colorado, and in the events that I've run. I've watched these men and women start to create businesses where they've 10x their income. They've gone from making $30,000 a month to $300,000 in 1 month. They've gone from working every single day and every single weekend, showing clients just multiple homes for weeks on end, to working 5, maybe 6 days a week. They ramped up, they built it, and then they pulled back and they started to become efficient. And this is what I want. This is what I want for all of you. So listen, this is the first episode of this. I had to give you some context about who I am and what I've pulled off. I didn't get out of this game because I'm afraid. I'm stepping back into this game as a coach because I know what you can do. I'm stepping back into this game as a coach because I know how hard it is. But I also know that if you're willing to do the work, you can pull this off. So subscribe to this channel and stay tuned, because the marketing content, the leadership content, the seduction content that you're going to get, well, we're going to attack every single one of the problems that you face. And if you find this useful, there's going to be an opportunity for us to have a conversation about what it would look like for us to work together. Don't worry about that right now. For now, just listen to this. And if you found it helpful, if you found it impactful, share it with one of your real estate friends or one of your mortgage friends. It's time. You deserve to have a business that makes you proud and supports the life that you're trying to build. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be simple. And I promise you this: if you do what I tell you, in 3 years you'll look back and you won't even recognize your life. Welcome to Be the Standard.